Hello, I'm doing Rosiek, and today we'll be talking about the mistreatment of Iranian citizens by their government. The Republic of Iran took power in 1979 with overwhelming support across the country. A constitution was drafted and a supreme leader was appointed. Pictured is the current supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. Khamenei has been in power as a supreme leader since 1989, which was only 10 years after the revolution. Khamenei played a key role in the Iranian Revolution and is a close confidant of the man who is considered to be the leader of this revolution. Since the revolution, tensions in the country and the state of tensions with other countries has not been promising. A quote from the U.S. Department of State says that the regime elites squander the people's resources and opportunities while at the same time suppressing freedom and basic human rights. During Donald Trump's presidency, he put into place something called the maximum pressure campaign. He talked about how this was necessary to deprive Iran of the resources it needs to brutalize its own people and fuel terrorism abroad. This speaks to the magnitude of the issue. For the sake of this presentation and to try to inform the public of what some of the minority groups are experiencing in the country, I'm going to specifically be focusing on the Baha'i people and people of the LGBTQ community. These groups have seen the worst of it from what I have read. To begin with, I want to look at the people of the Baha'i religion. The religion actually links to developing in Iran, but from the government's actions, it is obvious that they do not want these people in the country. They have been the subject to inhumane treatment from the government and countless unlawful acts for countless years. In 1979, the year of the Islamic Revolution, there were an estimated 170,000 Baha'is in the country. In the first 10 years of this newly founded government, more than 30,000 of that original amount had emigrated from Iran due to continuous religious persecution. This persecution starts from the government down. This religious persecution that I mentioned includes many ongoing human rights violations. These human rights violations include a large amount of executions, the use of torture, and restrictions on freedom of expression as well as peaceful assembly, which we'll look at here in a second. I found an example of these restrictions on peaceful assembly in which primarily peaceful protests broke out and were met by security forces hired by the regime that unlawfully fired live ammunition and metal pellets that ended up killing hundreds of men, women, and children, and even injuring more. But you wouldn't hear about that if you lived in Iran, due to the state-run television that they implemented. This in itself obviously creates larger issues stemming from a misinformed population. On top of implementing the state television, they have also limited online access and gotten rid of popular social media outlets. With the Baha'i people only making up a comparatively small amount of the population, it makes their lives even harder. The inhumane acts make their bodies less visible as if they don't matter, but the amount of the Baha'i people comparatively may make their bodies more seen as the numbers stack against them. As you can see in this chart, 0.5% of the total population of Iran is Baha'i. Transitioning to the members of the LGBTQ community, living in Iran, they face some of the same issues while having a little more layers. Unlike the Baha'i members of this community, members of this community may be able to hide that they are of this community a little bit better. This makes their bodies less visible as they're not able to show their true selves. Members of this community are seen as abnormal or as if there is something wrong with them. Family members disown you if you are found to be of this community and may even attempt to kill you for what they consider to be ruining the family name. It's safe to say the country's culture is very homophobic in nature and is deeply rooted within society. These homophobic views are rooted in a radicalized view of sexuality, cultural norms concerning sexuality and gender, and connections to religious institutions. So the very nature of someone being homosexual is considered to be that person departing significantly from religious values as well as social expectations. I should probably also mention that homosexuality is prohibited under the Penal Code 2013. Under the code, there are articles that describe what is considered to be the punishable acts of homosexuality. These punishments range from lashings, which is basically being struck by a whip, to the death penalty. And you may think that that's not something that they would enforce, but unfortunately, that is not the case. In February of last year, two men were executed after being convicted for same sex sexual activity 6 years prior. Also, in September of last year, a 16-year-old LGBTQ activist, Nika Shakarami, was murdered by the Iranian security forces. And back in 2021, a 20-year-old man named Alireza Fazeli Manfred, who identified as a non-binary gay man, was abducted and murdered by several family members on the basis of his sexual orientation and gender identity. He had been the subject of years of discrimination and abuse for his sexuality. I tell you these stories to stress the severity of the situation and why it is important for you to know what's going on. The stories I told are the stories that are known. But there are undoubtedly countless stories that have never made it to the press. What needs to happen is for more people to hear these stories, to know it's going on. What you can do is do some of your own research and talk about it. Get it out in the world and publicize so that efforts are made to stop this targeting of not only these two minority groups, but countless others as well. These people do not deserve to live like this, and it can't just keep going on. There needs to be something done. The insight I provided into the people of the Baha'i religion and those in the LGBTQ community in Iran is only a small glimpse of what is really happening in the country. All the minority groups are targeted and set up to fail. In no way am I saying every Iranian feels like this and targets these people, but it is an Islamic law and it goes against their beliefs in every way. Thank you.